Yes, you guys know it. Yes, it's earlier, 6 p.m. Pacific time, my time. A lot of people in the chat like, Eric, you're on a 6 now? Hey, we're on when we're on. Guys, we got a fantastic show tonight. I mean, I'm seriously, guys, we got a fantastic show. Of course, you guys know Bigfoot Anon. He co-hosts a lot of shows with me. He joins me with a lot of great shows, and he's on with me almost every single Wednesday. And down beneath us is Curtis Child of a YouTube channel called Off the Left Eye. And before we start, anytime we get a guest, a lot of times we ask ourselves how much we want to research this person. And sometimes we don't want to research it because we like to have somebody come on and like learn who he is, what he's about from the bottom up, Yeah. Because, I was not shocked, but I'm like, when you reached out and you're willing to come on the show, I'm like, wow, this is cool. This is awesome. So when I tell people, if the people in the chat don't know who you are, let's just break the ice, just right off the bat. Who is Curtis Childs?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'll give you the short version. So I run a YouTube channel called Off the Left Eye, and I do it for the Swedenborg Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organization that is centered around distribution and awareness of Emanuel Swedenborg. Who Swedenborg is, if you haven't heard that name, I feel like everybody who's interested in anything from spirituality to paranormal to anything in life philosophy to anything in between, you got to know who Swedenborg is. And most people don't, but he was this incredibly brilliant scientist who was sort of a rock star scientist in the 1700s, who then started having what we would now call spiritual or out-of-body experiences, where he saw all kinds of stuff about the other side of life in all of its forms, and he wrote it all down. He used his scientific mind to write it all down. I mean, this is a guy who would be when he would come to a new city, it would be in the newspaper, like Swedenborg. Think about if like Neil deGrasse Tyson or somebody who's a really famous scientist right now, if he suddenly came out and wrote on Twitter, started having spiritual experiences, I can now explore the spiritual world at will. I will be cataloging this for the rest of my life. That's what happened with Swedenborg. So he wrote, after he had these sort of breakthrough experiences, and for the rest of his life, for like 30 years in a row, he's having these having these metaphysical experiences every day. Wrote like 30 volumes of it, but also just used his scientific mind to catalog that with this same rigor and structure that he would do all that. He was a leading anatomist and engineer and inventor. He would take that same mind and put it on this supernatural side of life. So I find that the stuff he's got is fascinating. So I started back in 2010, late 2010, making videos that were making Swedenborg's material accessible, because it was originally in Latin, so we got people at the foundation who translated it into English, but it's also it's dense and it's philosophical and people find it confusing, but it's also shocking. I mean, it's like this fascinating mix of different, like there's out-of-body experiences and spirits and aliens and Christian mysticism. It's a lot of people just say, well, that's weird, there's nothing valuable in there. But if you take the time to get into it, you'll find information that ties all these other things in life together. So I feel like, this is really cool. People got to know about it. So I and my team have been making videos ever since, where we go through and try to use graphics and writing and humor and whatever we got to use to make it pop. And it's been an awesome ride. We've been able to pick up some subscribers and people who are interested. And yeah, we got like 1,000 videos on there exploring every bit of life. So yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, since 2010, because when I first got your email, I see the word Swedenborg Foundation. I'm like, Swedenborg Foundation, and at first I was like, who am I interviewing? Am I interviewing the Curtis guy? Because I see the Swedenborg Foundation. I didn't know if it's just somebody from the foundation or it's you. Oh, this just letting you know, Curtis, this is my brother, Dr. Wu. He's
hi. Hello, how are you? Salutations.
What's up, Dr. Wu?
I know Yeah, I'm an archaeologist. You're an alien, right?
You're talking about me?
Yeah.
No, I've been an Earth resident my whole life.
Oh, cool. So you're local.
in the-
Awesome.
Yeah.
In the email, I did somebody say in the email that you have spoke to aliens, or was that somebody else in the foundation?
Swedenborg, the guy I was just telling you about, the guy from the 1700s. So one of the things he did, here, let me grab it.
Okay.
He wrote a lot of books, and they were on all kinds of things, but one of them was called Other Planets. So this is, I think, one of the earliest, one of the amazing, one of the earliest accounts of, I don't know, like rigorous, like structured accounts of this is I saw aliens, I interacted with them, and this is what they were like. But like,
Do they have cloaca openings, or they have a penis?
You have to like write part 2 for that. Actually, it's not focused on physical as much as like what's the mental state of aliens? What do they think about? What do they talk about? And the catch is like what's different is that he was saying that he saw all this through the spiritual side of life rather than the physical. So he wasn't meeting aliens; he was meeting aliens who had died, just like he could talk to people who had died. And so in that way, he was able to catalog and travel and do all this stuff and encounter all these beings. So that's that. And that was something he stuck in the rest of his works. And obviously everybody in the 1700s was like, what are you talking about? What is this? But he had it in Other Planets, but then also throughout some of his other work.
That guy's very fascinating. Did he start with just meditation, or did he use psychedelics? Did he have just an abstract encounter that kind of broke free?
Yeah.
How did it all start for him?
The cool thing is he was keeping a journal at the time that it happened. So it was a travel journal, because back then, if you were to say, let's go from London to Amsterdam, because he needed to go from like Stockholm to Amsterdam because there was more freedom of the press in Amsterdam and in London, so he had to go publish there. But to get there was like weeks and on boats and things, and it was dangerous, and there was pirates and storms. So he'd keep a journal like, I got here, I made it. But we have this journal that has been recovered, and he was just like, oh yeah, arrived in London, arrived in Stockholm, but then he started recording his dreams in it, and he also started to like try to psychoanalyze the dream. So he'd say, like, for example, there was a black dog in my dream and it tried to bite me, and he'd start to say, well, I think this is a symbol of my pride and my ego. And this was way before Freud, and that was the cool thing to do. But then as it goes along, the dreams start to seep out from dreamland into, he starts to have waking experiences. He starts to have, he writes in there about the first time a spirit ever talked to him. He talks about having these sort of hypnagogic state experiences. And from there, it goes into what he calls experiences in a state of full wakefulness, which are just like, what would you call them now? Out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences. And so he started to, and he had a couple of really important ones of those. And then from there on out, it was like the switch was flipped. He called it having your spiritual eyes opened. He said, everybody's got like a body and a spirit. And you've got a spirit right now, and your spirit's got a form. Like, it's not just, it's got eyes, it's got ears, just like your body does, because it's hooked into your body. And usually that, it's like if you have a monitor and you've got like an HDMI cable in 2 different inputs, you got to like hit input 2 and to get to where you want. It's like that. Right now we're all through our physical input, but you can get it switched to where you're seeing through your spiritual eyes. So that was what that's what he says happened to him. And then from there on out, he wrote these books about philosophy and theology and how the afterlife works and all that. But also he was keeping this running journal of his spiritual experiences. So you kind of get in front and behind the scenes. And it was actually in some of his earliest works that he started talking about encountering the spirits of extraterrestrials. He called them all human. He said they're all human, even though he doesn't necessarily mean they're all the same species. But to him, it was like, if you can love things and think about things, that's like the core of what humans are. So he talks about a lot of beings that look fairly similar to us, but are sort of all humanoid, but have some differences as well. But to him, it was also really focused on not just what do they look like, but like what kind of spiritual practices do they have? What kind of philosophical practices do they have? And what matters to them? Like, are they superficial? Most of them were a lot less materialistic than we are. And that's kind of what he focused on there. So he has this fascinating journey through aliens from near and far in the galaxy.
Are these books that people can get nowadays? You can still get his books?
Yeah, man, you can. Actually, Swedenborg Foundation has them for free. You can download them at swedenborg.com. Other Planets is the name of the one. It's just most of his books are big and thick. This one's just little. So you can download that as a PDF or ebook. I think one of the ebooks is like $1 because you have to have it cost something to go on Amazon's store or whatever. But yeah, that's there, and then he's also got some extraterrestrial stuff in his longer works, but that's a lot of work. He has got a whole series called Secrets of Heaven where he talks about ETs and the same kind of thing. But yeah, it's around. It was all written in Latin back in the day. That Latin was kind of like English is now. That's the academic language or the universal language. And he was trying to talk to the scholars of his day and the religious leaders and say, look, life is not what you think it is. Here's how it really is. And it had mixed results. Back in that time, it was like a theocracy. So in Europe, in Sweden, for example, where he lived, the church was the state. And so he actually, because the stuff he was writing was so outside of and sometimes counter to the Christian church, he got put on trial for heresy, or his writings did. A lot of people thought he was crazy and made fun of him for that. He definitely, like, his career was on a trajectory where you probably would have heard of him just through school and stuff for his scientific stuff, but because he did all this woo-woo stuff, people kind of forgot about him.
Is this the proper website?
That's it. Yep. So if you click right there, free ebooks and downloads is like the second one down on there, but you should be able to
free downloads. Yeah, right there.
That's what I'm talking about, man. There should be other planets in there.
So people in the chat, I'm gonna put that link into the chat so you guys can download books. This might be a dumb question and all that, because so a lot of if I'm hearing it right, like the foundation's kind of based on like his writings in a way. Can somebody, don't take that as an insult, like can somebody say, well, this sounds like another Scientology, a book writer, then here's his church with his beliefs. Now I don't see this anywhere near that, but has people made claims trying to say this is like a, you know what I mean?
Oh no, it makes total sense. This is what I would say. I don't know Scientology too well. All I know about Scientology is, did you guys see that documentary with Leah Remini, the actress from King of Queens? Well, she was like in Scientology, and she made this long doc. I forget what channel it was on, but it was all about how Scientology, like, it was like the church was coming after her and like trying to kill her, and it basically like seems like this really bad thing. That's all I know of Scientology. But this is what. So Swedenborg Foundation is a pretty innocuous thing. It's a not-for-profit organization, 170 years old, that has been basically just translating and distributing Swedenborg's work. Swedenborg didn't found it. This is like groups of people who, after his death, were reading his books and were like, oh, this is cool. And so they got together and translated it. Swedenborg never had, when he was alive, he didn't have any followers or religious disciples or anything like that. There was some people who knew of him. He had like a lot of friends in the nobility and in sort of the upper class and stuff. So he had like an audience, but he never gave lectures about it. He never had people come and live with him and that kind of stuff. So he was pretty focused on like, write the books, publish it, get it out. So I think that's working in his favor. And yeah, the Swedenborg Foundation is like, you can join it if you want, but that just means you get discount on books, and like it's not like Scientology in that way. And so Yeah, I think also though, like the world that Swedenborg describes is very open-ended. Like he's saying, for example, one of the things he said that got him in trouble with the Christian churches, he did talk about an afterlife with a heaven and a hell in it. But to him, heaven and hell, he said these are states of mind primarily. So heaven is based, everything there is based on sort of what kind of motivation and joy you get out of things. So the joy or the motivation to make life better for people and the joy that that brings, like that's heaven. And the motivation to dominate or exploit people and the joy that brings, like that's hell. And he said that you don't have to be Christian to go to heaven, which at the time was like, no, you can't say that. Only Christians can go to heaven. So he wasn't saying, oh, you've got to be Christian to go to heaven. He wasn't saying you had to read his books to go to heaven. He just said all you have to do to get to that state of mind that's called heaven is live rightly by what you believe. So that's just like not that culty, you know. Yeah, it's interesting. There have been some churches that have been based on Swedenborg. There's also been a lot of people who are just influenced by him outside of churches, and some famous people like Emerson, Thoreau, Helen Keller, some of the bigger names. There's a part of the city of Chicago that's designed based on Swedenborg's description of like this spiritual city that he saw, like the World's Fair. That Daniel Burnham, I think, was the architect that did that. So he's out there, but I just don't think. I just think that there's not like a big, powerful organization based on Swedenborg, that he doesn't have teachings that kind of lock you in. It's more like, it just is like, I think it's really well suited for YouTube, which is like, hey, it's the marketplace of ideas. We're going to put these ideas out, you know, take them if you want them. Even within his books, he's always like, you got to consult your rationality. You got to be in freedom. All this is super important. And it's also, he was in this like Enlightenment era phase where it was all about personal experience, because like that was observation was really starting to come into its own. So for example, in this book, Other Planets, his chapter heading, he'll say like, this is from stuff I observed myself, because this is not theory. This is not religious dogma. This is like, I saw this, I went and I saw this. So that's what that's why I would say it's weird. Like Scientology is weird. Like Swedenborg will talk again. He's talking about aliens. He's talking about spirits and angels, and he's talking about like symbolism and everything. It's definitely out there, but it doesn't have that kind of like aggressive cult control-y stuff that from what I know of Scientology.
You just need a Tom Cruise. You need to get a guy like Tom Cruise, right? Get Ben Affleck.
He doesn't call me back. I call him. He doesn't call me back.
We actually did a show on Scientology. We actually made a lot of phone calls on air, doing live shows, calling different Scientologies and asking them questions. Some answered questions, some didn't. You know, and the only thing I got to say is I'm not against Scientology or not, but if that's what makes somebody a better person, it's their choice. You know, I don't know how much of the cult there is because I'm not in it. You know, I've never seen it personally, hands on. Now, your part with the foundation, on the University Foundation, are you like the head person that's running it, or are you just like spokesperson for them in a way? What do you do for them?
My job title is Vice President of Programming and Chief Visionary Officer. So that sounds pretty important. I'm not there. We do have a CEO who's like running making the numbers work and organizing that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of other talented people in there. And I really came into the Swedenborg Foundation through doing social media and the YouTube videos, and that kind of just taken off. So I had the enthusiasm for Swedenborg because it was like the things that he described, like the way he describes how human minds work and why we like think and feel the way we are, the way that was really helpful to me. Like I was like, oh, that is kind of how my mind works. And when I was like dealing with all this, I had all this depression and anxiety, and I was like trying to get out of that. And his material was really helpful. So I had this enthusiasm for it. I felt like he's onto something, and this has helped me. So I got to tell other people about it, because most people are like, I open this. This is weird. I'm going to throw this away. But I want to say, wait, you might like something in there. So I had the enthusiasm for it, and I was just used to talking about it. So I started putting videos out about it on YouTube. I didn't think anyone would be interested at all. I thought it's too hard of a sell, because he's got a lot of religious kind of spiritual language, but also all these encounters, and just what's the target market for that? But people are into it, and people were finding like that it was helping them, like it helped me. So through that, I've just kept making the videos and become gotten into the position I'm in at the Swedenborg Foundation, and yeah, working with a lot of other good people though that make it happen.
Wow.
It's truly amazing. I can't wait to
Yeah.
see like a shortcut, because all his theories and just lifestyle is amazing, but you're meeting us halfway and making it easier, and you're allowing us to actually find those texts too. So it's
Yeah.
special. You're making it both ways, a two-way street, and that's special. I'm very excited to see what he has to offer to my sponge.
Yeah, I love that, my sponge. That's good.
Thank you.
So if somebody if somebody goes to your channel, I'm talking about your YouTube channel, like to learn more about you or the foundation, I mean, do you have like the one video that you recommend everybody seeing, or you just have so much stuff on there, just like pick and choose?
Man, if you go to the home tab, you're on videos right now. So that one right there, what happens immediately after you die, that is one of our maybe that's our most viewed video, I would think. And that's what a lot of people's interest is in, because Swedenborg had this extensive description of the afterlife. So, like near-death experiences, like Raymond Moody made that term up in his book, Life After Life. And in that book, there's this whole section on Swedenborg and how similar Swedenborg's accounts hundreds of years ago are to modern near-death experiences. So not only does he give kind of a description like your people who have a near-death experience do, but he also sort of tells you like the physics and stuff of it. Like not only this is what happens there, but this is why it happens, and there's Raymond Moody. I told you there's Raymond Moody in there. So that the what happens immediately after you die is kind of like an overview of what happens immediately after you die. So afterlife stuff is pretty potent there. There's a short video we have. It's called "You Are the Lungs," which I think is also one of our more viewed videos. That is like a little summary of this cool principle or axiom he has about what he calls the grand human being, which is basically that humans can work together in the same way that all the parts of a human body work together. That actually the state of heaven is when you're all kind of in the mindset that the pieces of the body are in. So if you think about if you're like a cell in the liver, what are you doing all day? You're like, I'm going to contribute to the health of this thing, and I'm going to receive everything I need from it. So to him, like the human form was this picture of heavenly cooperation. So we had a video that kind of illustrates that. So there's a couple, but people come in interested in so much different stuff, right? So some people would want to come in and hear about his encounters with aliens. Some people would want to come in and hear about what's his view on, let's say, the Bible, because he had to him, he was convinced that the whole Bible is this big code. Basically, it's symbolic. It's written in this symbolic language that he called correspondences. And he said that's something that's been across many different cultures. Egyptian hieroglyphics were based on correspondences. You dream in correspondences. This is why weird people show up in your dreams and things that, like, why am I in this house and it feels like it's my house, but it's not my house. In nature, ancient religions would look to nature so he's saying that universal symbolic language is in the Bible. Some people are wondering about that, and they have affection for the Bible, but they have these experiences with it, or they don't get some parts of it, so they'll be looking for that. Or some people are looking for, they've had experiences with like negative entities of some kind, or like evil spirits, and they like want to know what he had to say about that, because he had a lot of encounters with like the dark side of the spiritual world. So people are interested in all kinds of different stuff, and luckily YouTube will just like serve it up to them, whatever they're searching for. People will say, I don't know what I was doing, but I was searching for this, and then you popped up. So let the algorithm work its magic a lot of those times.
That's amazing. Did he ever use sensory deprivation tanks or anything like that? Any cool tools?
He doesn't. Surprisingly, he doesn't give a ton of window into how he achieved things. I know breathing was really important to him. He talks about the breath being connected to intellect. He talks about meditating in his garden. Although when he used that phrase, it's whatever, it was a Latin phrase originally, but what they translated as meditating. Usually he's talking about not just, we think of meditating as like try to clear your minds, but he was saying like meditating, like focusing on a particular concept. Like he'll say, I was meditating on the nature of the soul and something. And then as he's doing that, he comes into this spiritual experience, and he's talking to people in the afterlife, and they're saying, well, I'll tell you about what the soul is and what it does. I will say that he felt like, even though when he started having these experiences, he stopped his scientific pursuits. He wasn't doing papers on anatomy anymore. But he didn't say that, oh, that was all a waste of time. He felt like that was intentionally laid in his life as the foundation, because he had to understand the way the physical world works to understand the way the spiritual things work. Just like I was telling you that the whole human body is this picture of heaven, basically. Because he was like at the leading edge of anatomy for that time. I mean, we know much more now today than he did back then, but at the time he had a pretty advanced knowledge of all the different parts that are in you and some of how they work together. And so for him, he could understand that spiritual concept so much better. So I think that he would, interestingly enough, it would be like, cultivating your rational mind, resisting negative stuff and instead focusing on like altruistic, loving stuff. Those can provide kind of get you in the right state so that if you do get your spiritual eyes opened, it's a good experience. But other than that, no, he doesn't. He doesn't really describe. Didn't really describe tools or anything. He didn't. There's no record of him using substances. He never wrote about it. He did he drank a lot of coffee, and I think he did like snuff. I think that was the thing people did back in the day. But and like had a pretty simple diet by the end, like just kind of like bread and milk or something, like when he was really getting into his phase. But he doesn't. He was. I mean, he was a gardener. He had this plot of land in Stockholm with a little garden house in it. He'd always be like making little mazes in there and stuff, and importing all these exotic plants and putting them in there. And a lot of his writing was done in that garden house. And his garden would feature in his spiritual experiences. I'm sure that was like a part of it, but he doesn't give you many tips or tricks on how to trigger spiritual experiences. And I think that, well, interestingly enough, even though they were so useful to him, part of his message was like, you don't have to have spiritual experiences to be spiritual. Like that, it's really just about an affection for being useful. So wanting to do things that benefit people. Like that's the core of it. And all this other stuff can help expand your picture of it, but it's not like, oh, you can't get going until you can have these experiences. So he really had a lot of practical, sort of down to earth advice, even though the way he got to it was really out there.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. When he's talking about, the afterlife, does he talk about, your third eye, your pineal gland leaking out DMT, and that's the realm you're in of the next chapter, or like, because he sounds like he's into that a little bit?
Yeah. So he doesn't. Let's see, pineal gland. He does talk about people thinking like the whole soul. Back in the day, people were looking for the soul. Like, where does the soul live? And he was saying like, it's not in one little gland. It's not in the pineal gland. It's attached to your whole body. But he did, interestingly enough, well, he didn't. I don't think he used the term third eye. I think that comes from Eastern traditions and that hadn't like come West yet. But he does talk about. He says that God looks at you through your forehead, between the eyes, which is like right where that third eye is. Yeah. And he talks about being brought into, he says he was shown like what the dying experience is like. And he was brought into this state where his physical body got really inoperative. And he had this little bit of it was barely breathing, but he could feel then his spirit start to breathe. And I'm sure that's like, when when your body is really dying, you have this release of DMT, or so they might think. So they didn't know about brain chemicals back then. So he had he didn't have that to compare it to. But the stuff that he talks about on the spiritual side, there's not a universal terminology for it, but he'll just talk about. We have a video that's called "What Heaven Feels Like," and he says every nerve felt like it was alive with joy, and you can take your thoughts and feelings and pass them to the person next to you, and it's really intense stuff. He talks about atmospheres in the spiritual world that are composed of little rainbow-like prisms, or golden light, or there's everything out there that you could possibly imagine. There's people who appear in all these wild looking forms based on what's kind of in their heart and in their mind. You could make any number of Netflix series about it, or movies about it. It's very colorful stuff when you get to the spiritual side of it.
It sounds amazing. He was alive during the giants. I'm sure he was out, conversing with giants or something, man. This guy was next level. I think everything happens for a reason. Like you said, everybody who's into consciousness and supernatural should be this guy should be the uncle to us, or the godfather, honestly. But yeah, I feel like maybe the world has kind of, hid his work from people too. Maybe because it just radiates positivity and togetherness, and not one religion, just all together. And yeah, micro macro, man, it's very interesting.
I think people just they didn't know what to do with him, because he's this weird combination of flavors, because he sounds very Christian when you encounter him. He's often called, if you look at his Wikipedia page, I think it says he's a Christian mystic, and he'll talk about the Bible and Jesus and all that stuff. So that would be oh, Christians might like him. But then he'll say, oh, anyone can go to heaven. He'll talk about spirits and all this stuff that Christians are well, what's that? But people who are spiritual but not religious will see the Christian stuff and think, oh, he's just thinking in these little boxes, even though what he means by those, heaven and hell, for example, is way different. It's so rigorous and philosophical that your casual reader might be well, what's this? But it's also talking about, again, spirits and angels. So your intellectual reader will say he's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So it's there's good stuff in there, but it's a little hard to get to. It's hard to realize the value of what you're holding, which I guess is part of why I feel like it's important to get this stuff into video form and show people, no, wait, the Uncle Swedenborg has some stuff for you. It's cooler than you think it is. And he was popular a bit for a while. There was a time in America, I think it was in the 1800s, when seances got really big. So there was this craze where everyone was doing seances. And at that time, I think people were oh yeah, Swedenborg talked to spirits. So I've seen newspapers from back then, they would have articles about Swedenborg, or this thing smacks of Swedenborg. But I think that kind of went out of fashion, because there's a couple of scandals of some people were faking it, just so he kind of got lost with that. But I think, the world missed him. And I think that when I first got on YouTube, I remember looking at what was the conversation around spirituality or religion on there. And it was just it was either your hardcore atheist or fundamentalist Christian, right? And those two were kind of battling each other. And I felt there's a middle kind of ground here that I think Swedenborg represents a lot of, that I just not a lot of people are doing. I think YouTube has kind of filled out since then, and there is a lot of complexity there, but I just feel for the world at large, there's some value to be gained there that people missed. And also, and he doesn't, sometimes people will grab onto religious kind of stuff because they want to be in a in-group, and other people are out of it, and we're right and you're wrong. And Swedenborg saying things not everybody can be right. And really that it doesn't, what you believe about life, he says, barely matters compared to what you love. So you can have he was saying he was surrounded by people who had all these Christian doctrines, and they could say them all, and they went to church. But if what you love is your own eminence and being better than people and being superior to people, nothing. You don't have anything going on, and that two people who have very different beliefs about the world, but yet both are looking to do what's right. Those people have a lot more in common. So I think it just isn't as sticky, as some other stuff because it's got this sort of more mature look at life.
I love it, man. I'm blown away. I'm gonna be up pretty late tonight. I already know.
That's good.
No, it's a great learning things for the first time. So that means you're open to any kind of not anything, but I mean you're open to when people want to talk about like the Bigfoot side of the world, the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, and the Yetis. What's your belief on cryptids and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I hope they're real. That would be so great. I don't have any Swedenborg side to it. Like he talks about like all kinds of crazy creatures, but they're all on the spiritual side of life. So he would talk about in the afterlife, for example, because in the afterlife, I'll talk about afterlife, then I'll talk about physical. But like in the afterlife, he says like things like dragons are really there. Like this is why they're in our imagination here, because their ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions can take life, kind of, that they can be displayed. And if a bunch of people are under the delusion of a particular falsity, that manifests itself as this like creature, like a dragon or something. So he talks about stuff like out of Greek mythology, like Cerberus, the big 3-headed dog. He talks about really seeing that in the afterlife, that they're really, those things are there. And that's kind of where people got the idea from them. So there's all kinds of that stuff there. I remember when I was younger, but then just for me personally, because he doesn't say anything about physical, is there, fantastic creatures that exist physically. But when I was younger, I remember reading all about, there was like a giant a squid that washed up on the beach in the 1800s. There was an octopus, and supposedly it was like hundreds of feet across, way bigger than, and I was like, I hope this is real. And then I remember reading about there was these larvae of eels that are usually like this big, but they found an eel larva that was like 6 feet long. And so how big is the grown-up one of those? I would love it. I mean, I've always like a Loch Ness Monster. I remember reading books about Loch Ness Monster and because I was already into dinosaurs and stuff. I was like, oh. So I don't have anything to bring you from Swedenborg, but I hope that you guys or somebody finds one of those things, because that you never know. And that'd be so great. Just, I'm a lover of biology in the first place. Like I love all the different species of animals, and I was studying that originally. So anytime you discover a new species or something, it's like this amazing addition. So I hope so.
Well, they say there's about 2,000 species found every year,
Right.
Every year. So, I mean, you never know, so since, like you said, the founder, the UFOs and stuff, when you hear about UFOs nowadays, the government doing their coming out, supposedly, they're going to be looking into the UFOs way more and all that. When you see all these UFOs going on now with the governments and all that, what does that mean to you? Do you think you think the government really going to investigate these UFOs like they're supposed to? And
why wouldn't they want to? It was amazing because before the recent kind of, okay, we admit we really see UFOs, the CIA did or something, where they released all those papers. Yes, we really see them. I remember just watching, well, everybody has, like on History Channel, there's these shows about all the encounters that people have had and everything like that. So I just thought like, yeah, there's probably aliens. And so, and having Swedenborg talk about aliens the way that he does, and that yeah, there's other humans in the universe, and actually that big human form that I talked about, like that heaven, like the human form. He says you can't make that out of just people from one planet, because everybody thinks differently, and you need, just like in the body, you can't have like all knuckles. You can't make a person out of all the same. You need all these different parts. You need some parts that are hard and some parts that are soft and some parts that are complex and some parts that are strong. And it's just like all the different kinds of people. all of us can form different parts of it. But Swedenborg says that goes on even to people from other planets, that they think differently. He says that people on Earth are relatively superficial, like materialistic, and compared to people from other planets, and that like we'll in the grand human, people from this Earth will correspond more to like the skin or the bones, but people from another planet will correspond to like the memory, like stuff that's inside, kind of in the mind of it. So to me, I think that there's some kind of, we're made to interact with each other. And so I would love it if if we've got these UFOs and it's confirmed that they're really out there, and it'd be so great to just like, we make all these movies about that, like this open contact, and we talk with them and they talk with us. I want that to happen. I haven't ever had an experience, like I've known a couple people who have had like a sighting of something they can't explain, but I always want to have one. I'm always like, what's that like? Oh, it's an airplane. Yeah. But like, I'm ready. I'm ready for when it happens.
Manifestation. You already know.
Yeah. Well, right.
I mean, it sounds like you're ready, and we know Connor's ready. But do you think like the rest of the people on this planet, like they're ready? That's what I always wondered. Can society collapse because everybody, they can't handle? The old saying, people can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
I think. What do you think of the people you see? You think they can't handle the truth?
I just feel like people are already so crazy about everything. Like, let's just put it in there and see what happens. Like I feel like there's, people were able to handle everything that's happened in the past 50 years. I mean, you go from having to like, hi, is so-and-so home? Oh, they're not. Okay, I'll call back when they are. To like internet's everywhere in everyone's pockets. Everything we're learning about the size of the universe. Not that long ago, we thought like, oh, maybe there's a couple other galaxies. Now we know there's hundreds of billions of galaxies. So many things have gone. I feel like it might chill people out to know about aliens. If it was, because it's like human race. There's so much tension in the human race right now. It's like me against you. It's kind of. But if it was like, oh, there's a much bigger picture here, maybe that would get us to like, well, we got to see our place in it. I don't know. I feel like an optimist about that. I feel like, yeah, come on, just let it happen. And then maybe people will chill out and kind of wake up a little more or something.
In a perfect world, I think that can happen.
Yeah.
In this doomed world right now, I don't know, Project Bluebeam, they're like, yeah, let's fake the alien invasion. You guys all go to Walmart and stay there forever.
Yeah. I'm not saying it could go terribly wrong. I've seen movies about both, so.
Did he have any warnings of like the future or any bad things happen? What happened, to him later in his life too?
He didn't make a lot of predictions and didn't make any specific predictions, but he did make one general, really positive prediction. So he had, when I was talking before about the way that he'll use Christian terminology, but use it to mean different things than it originally meant. He talks about what he calls churches, except for he doesn't mean particular religious organizations. He'll use the term church to refer to eras in human spiritual history. So he'll talk about it's translated most ancient church. And that was this earliest phase in the human race when people so our default was being altruistic. People weren't greedy. People weren't trying to conquer each other and amass wealth. Everyone was pretty kind, and spiritual experiences were an everyday thing. This is just like how you did it. People were just connected to that world and everything. So that was like the most ancient church. And there's people had maybe like different rituals and religious beliefs or whatever, but because they were all in a similar sort of state of heart around the world, that was the most ancient church. But then that kind of collapsed, and you got to a succession of these different church eras that were successively more shallow and more warlike. And finally, he was saying that in his day, it had almost collapsed. Like you had like a bunch of church organizations, but there was just a lot of cruelty in it. People didn't really care. There wasn't that love there, and it was just a lot of for show. There wasn't really people really, living the good life. And so he said that it was kind of collapsing, but he said that there's a new church coming. So that doesn't mean like, there's going to be like.
You're getting a lot of nice comments, Curtis. Dina P say, I wish he could stay on all night long.
Hey, Dina.
Daniel saying you're very well spoken.
Thank you.
I mean, and Danny said earlier, very interesting dude tonight. Lots of information to think about. And that's the thing. When you make people think about something to research stuff on the side, I mean, you're doing a great job.
I better quit while I'm ahead now. See you guys later.
New church is coming. It was just getting great. The new church is coming.
The new church is coming. And so the new church is not like, there's a new kind of religion, but a new spiritual era for the human race. He said that in 1757 there was a major event in the spiritual world, which kind of restructured it and ordered it. He calls it the Last Judgment. He didn't believe that there's actually going to be like a judgment day. He said that was a spiritual thing that happened. He says because our consciousness is downstream from the spiritual world, so what's going on in the spiritual world affects how we think and feel here and how we can think and feel. So like sort of the quality of the mental and emotional life of human beings. So because this big event happened in the spiritual world, that actually opened up people to thinking more clearly and being more rational. And that some people think that, since then there's been these amazing advances in technology and society and everything that came from that. But he said that was the start of this implementation. He doesn't say how long it would take of the new church. And he describes it a bit, not a ton of exactly what it's like, but it's good. He says that it's going to be the best era that it's ever been. It's going to be the best it's ever been. And it's going to be characterized by people living lives in which love for others and particularly that expression through doing what's good and having that be the most important thing in life. That's going to become characteristic of what the human race is like, which seems incredible, based on how it is now. But he was convinced. He said that there's it's not going to happen right away, but that it's going to happen. So he was, I guess, optimistically seeing that. But he said that this was kind of, it's like the human race kind of had its childhood. We had this innocent phase in the beginning, and then you get into sort of adolescence and adulthood. Things get grittier. But we were almost like the human race is, either like in this wise old age coming to, or like die and go to heaven. Like this is the new beginning. So to him, he was convinced that the best is yet to come in the form of this new church.
It's beautiful, man. When he talks about the Bible, does he mention the firmament and the dome a lot? Does he, take pride in the heaven being a physical place? I know in the afterlife, it's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But in this life, is it up there? Is that what he believes? Because that's what the Bible says.
Yeah, he does not think you can't get somewhere spiritual from somewhere physical. So that he talks about discrete degrees. So there's continuous degrees and discrete degrees. Continuous degree is like a slide where you're ramping up, and then you're there. But discrete degrees are like stairs. You got to make a jump. You can't go right from one to the other. So the physical and spiritual world, they interact with each other through correspondences, through this symbolism, but you can't ever go from one to the other. Like you couldn't get a spaceship and go far enough that you'd be in heaven. So the firmament, that whole creation story for him is not about how the world came to be physically. It is the biblical text is focused on each individual person's journey toward the state of heaven. So that creation story is the creation of you as a spiritual person. So without form and void, the very first, that's you when you're just you're living your ego life You're not thinking about anyone else. You're self-centered and materialistic. Like think about when you were 15 or something. It's like, how cool am I? Whatever. This is like when it's all about me, I'm just living my life there. And when God says, let there be light, that's the first time we have this inkling of like, maybe there's something more than this. The light in your mind. And then everything that follows in the next days, the waters above and below, that is like your higher self and your lower self. So that distinction, the firmament, is when you start to be able to see in yourself and say, like, oh, I don't agree with that thought. Like that's terrible. Why would I think that about that? You're starting to differentiate inside yourself, and the separation of land and sea is like all of your facts and knowledge, but then it's like the land is like your emotion. And when plants start growing, that's like when positive or spiritual concepts start to take root in there. And then he goes through the progression of the birds and the fish are like everything is coming to life in you. The birds and the fish are like your ideas, which they were there before, but they weren't alive, meaning they weren't serving what was good. Then the animals are like your feelings that serve that. And finally you get to this place where God rests, which is where you're like in tune with the divine and you're living from love. And then so that's the kind of stuff. And he spends like hundreds of pages describing what that means in detail, but that's like the summary. And we have a couple of videos that summarize that. We're doing a show right now about the Garden of Eden story and how it's not about, according to Swedenborg, it's not about the first two people that ever lived. Like that's not, the human race didn't start with just two people. This is about that earliest church or the earliest state of mind where we had this intuitive goodness, where we had this spiritual connection, and leaving the garden is the loss of that state in human beings. So we're working on that show right now. It's like so hard we're trying to make it into like a 22-minute program. And it's like, how are you going to condense all this? But we're working on it. So to him, like the whole like creation versus evolution debate is like, it's not a thing for him, because he was, from the beginning saying like, this is, it's not just allegory, but it's correspondence. So it's teaching you about spiritual stuff that's relevant to you, whoever you are in whatever phase of your life, through this symbolism. And to try to unpack that symbolism was a huge part of what he felt like he was doing with the last half of his life.
Amazing. I feel like the word of the book knew that everyone wasn't going to believe the book, but they still wrote it in a way that everybody is going to absorb it,
Yeah.
Regardless.
Because it's it's tangible. Mm-hmm. It's tangible. Everyone can remember. Oh yeah. There's that story where there's a snake in it, and she eats the fruit. Or oh yeah, there's like the firmament. Those are concrete things. Because if you just tried to have a book of philosophy, it's just like you're going to develop, like what I just said about you developing spiritually. It's hard to remember that, but also to survive the translation and languages. But he also said that like the worlds, like the spiritual world and the physical world, are like skin and muscle in a human, like the outer and the inner part, they work so closely together that if somebody is like studying the literal text and what it means, at the same time, people in the afterlife are like, are tuned into what the inner sense is. And you can like almost work as a unit there. So it's all set up to be sort of like this. We did a show about the Bible as like, it's almost like a piece of spiritual technology. Like it connects those worlds because it's something that is very concrete and yet holds within it something very meaningful and abstract. And that's kind of like the physical holding the spiritual.
Some special work, man. And I'm sure I came across some of your videos late night, midnight on my journeys, but
right.
It's nice to finally put a name to the face, I guess. But
sure thing, yeah.
That's amazing stuff, man.
Yeah, it's fun.
No, I'm just taking it all in, listening to all this stuff for the first time. I love the conversation and all that. I noticed one thing on your channel. You also talk about here. Let me go back to your YouTube channel. Where is it? 'Cause I see you talk about people's depressions. So you talk a lot about different things on here. Do we have free will?
Right.
The end of the world. Do you believe that an end of the world is coming for us?
No, I don't think it will. And Swedenborg, this has been something that people have thought for a long time because of the Book of Revelation, where it's within the Christian tradition anyway. I know there's been other traditions, but within the Christianity, I remember. So I'm in the Philadelphia area, and there's this major highway called I-95 that goes through here, and you can come up out of Philly on it. And I remember, oh man, it's probably 7 years ago or something, seeing this billboard that said, like, July 21st, 2016, Judgment Day. This guy had figured out when it was going to be, and it didn't happen. We're still here. And there's been like these predictions for end of the world, like every year since that, because you got the Book of Revelation, which is giving you this dramatic imagery, and stars are falling out of the sky, and dragons' tails are taking celestial objects and smashing them on the ground. It's like really intense. But it too is symbolic in the same way that the creation story is. And we've done a lot of shows on that. The Book of Revelation is about the upheaval that goes on in every individual. And it's about, at the same time, it's about the upheaval that goes on in the way the human race thinks and feels about things. All this stuff, like the dragon stands for what Swedenborg would call the faith alone, which I think you could say is like concepts without love. So if you, for example, like in the religious context, Swedenborg would say, like, you'd have these people who had all these religious principles and were using them to commit atrocities because you had these ideas without love. So, if I happen to know something about someone and it's not flattering, and I just like, okay, I'm going to go say that to somebody because I know it, but I don't care. That in the human race at large, and you see this, like, people have such strong clashes over ideas, and we're like ready to kill each other because we think differently, is because you have this faith or the intellectual component without love. Like, love is not in charge. It's ideas that are in charge, which are really then driven by this love of dominion or love of being better. That's the dragon. And that he said the dragon had destroyed religion. Because if you talk about religion to people, they think, oh yeah, these judgmental people, that because there's not that. It's supposed to be. What are the two? Jesus is talking about the two great commandments: to love God and love your neighbor. If that's not there, the whole thing falls apart. So all these things, of like the stars coming down, as people's loss of understanding of what's going on in life, and so all of that is what Revelation is about. So through his correspondential interpretation, you don't see it as, it's right, love is the highest power. For what it's worth, Swedenborg said that love plays the same role in the spiritual world that gravity plays here. Like, love is what brings people into spaces that really, like, literally pulls people together on the spiritual side of life. So anyway, he said, world's not going to end. World has a very important purpose, which is people live our lives here. We in our freedom sort of form our own spirits through what we choose and what we love. And this is, you couldn't have heaven without the world. If the world goes, like, if the skin dies on the body, how's the body going to do, right? If you knock if you're going to crack in the foundation, or the foundation gets obliterated in a house, how's it going to be in the kitchen, right? It doesn't. They need each other. Everything needs each other. That's like, creation is holistic. So there's no plans to have the world end anytime soon. Individually, we can go through big things, and it can feel like the world's ending. But he didn't. He said that you can scratch that off your worries list. That tomorrow that the whole world is going to end. The world's important. It's got to stick around.
But we were ready to leave our jobs and just start marching and taking off. Darn it. Now the world's not going to end. God dang it. Connor, we're still going to have to work some more. I was hoping he was going
to. I'm sorry. I've ruined it.
What do you feel? It's my little paranormal with everything you're saying. what are ghosts to you then? You know, we think of ghosts of energy, you know,
Yeah.
people not really passing on, you know, their energy staying around here. So when you hear about paranormal ghosts and energy, do you think the same as we do, their energy, or do you have a different belief for the spirits and ghosts, the people who
Yes.
passed away?
Yeah, and well, definitely, I feel like I get a lot of material from Swedenborg on that. He doesn't use the term ghost; he always uses the term spirits. But essentially, like the spiritual world, he says, is not. He has a quote. I'll paraphrase, which he says: "People think of the spiritual world like it's something out there, like a bird that's flying off in the atmosphere, but really, it's like a bird that's right in front of your face, like brushing your face with its feathers." The spiritual world, another one, he says that the spiritual world is right where we are, not distanced from us in the least. And Swedenborg, because he had his spiritual eyes and ears open, he could be in a room and be talking with physical people, but also understand what the spirits around were saying and thinking. And it's not exactly a one-to-one, like not all spirits can see what's happening in the physical world, but they're aware of certain parts of it. Like they may not be able to see you, but they can know at times what you care about and what you're thinking about. So he was visited by what we would call ghosts all the time. So he had all kinds of encounters with negative entities and spirits. He didn't. We had a show.
In a way, he's a medium. In a lot of ways, he's a medium when you think of a modern day person.
I think that's a fair way to describe it. It's like a medium. Yep. And we did a show on our channel. I think it's called "Do Ghosts Exist?" where we give everything he says about it. He will sometimes, he talks just obscurely a few times about spirits being somehow attached to physical objects. Like he said, there were spirits with him who didn't want him to break a certain teapot that he had in his house, which is like so funny. But because he almost like irrationally they believed that they needed that teapot to survive. He talked about the spirits that were with him when he would go into a different room or go somewhere he hadn't been before, that they were all confused. Like, where is this? And they didn't know how to. So there was like such an interaction all the time there. So to him, the idea that you could have interactions with the spiritual world is like, oh yeah, no duh. You're always interacting with the spiritual world. So ghosts and things, I would imagine that it's some kind of way that you're sensing spirit in some way, or you're able to pick up on. I don't know. I don't even know if he knew exactly how the physics of that would work. But he certainly gives all kinds of material on the closeness and the presence of the spiritual world, and that it's all, it's all around it. It's in everything.
It's amazing. You mentioned the World's Fair earlier. Why are they not still hosting it? Do you think that they're hiding our, megalithic past? Did America used to have, pyramids and kings and queens? Did he talk about any of that?
Oh man, he doesn't. The histories that he gives are like sort of like his alien encounters are relatively general and always focused on what's the spiritual or religious state of things. So, like he says, you had these different church eras, and he'll just usually talk about how people thought and what they believed and what was important to them. So he doesn't. I don't think he gives you anything good about. I mean, he talks about people used to breathe differently than we do now. He says that people used to have more internal breath. He said people used to communicate much more with facial expressions than we do now. That they had like the sort of muscles around our lips now are relatively stiff. But he said back then you could display you could almost like a form of sign language with just like little subtle movements of your face, and people could pick up on that. And we used to be much more honestly expressive. So what you were feeling would show up. Now it's really easy to pretend. Like you guys seem interested in what I'm talking about, but you could be totally faking that, right? I wouldn't be able to really tell. So he gives some insights into those kinds of things, but he doesn't give any real sort of civilizational history.
Very interesting. He was focused on the energy and the beyond and not
Right.
caught up in the physical life. I admire that about him, of course, but I'm sure he had to battle his own petty physical hurdles every day just to get to this, magic and that next beyond. I'm sure back in the day, the 1700s allowed for a cleaner landscape, maybe a little less static in the air and electronic
Right.
frequency interference and stuff. But yeah, he seemed very focused, and like you said, that's all it is just to be focused on something. That's meditation. You don't have to get in all zen. You just have to be in the moment, into something precise, and that's when we feel best. That's when time flies. Fall into it.
Yeah, what's it called? Being in the zone or flow state, right?
Yep. It's automatic.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back. So like I said, so the website itself is called the Swedenborg Foundation.
Right.
And then who is Swedenborg? Of course, that's probably, if I click on it, it's probably his story, correct?
Yep.
So that tells you who he is, of his life. 88 to 7. Wow, he lived a pretty long life too, especially during that era. In that era, people. Wow, that's pretty
life
good.
expectancy was like in your 30s or something.
Yeah. That's what I'm about to get at. Yeah.
He was like 80, 82, I think, when he died.
When you mentioned the facial muscles, it went straight for Bigfoot for me, like caveman, because of course they have to stay low key. So of course they're going to communicate with nonverbal language a lot of time, and their face is known for being strong. So wow, it's just crazy how some things come out of left field and they make sense.
That's great. It's all connected, man.
Yes. The red yarn theory. People are in string theory. I like the red yarn theory, that everybody you cross and interact with, we're all on just a long interconnected yarn. It was I first got that from the Kiefer Sutherland show Touch, where basically everything is connected. The seashells, the pine cones, the brain, and the real cosmic above us, not the fake one.
And people in the chat, if you guys have a question, you guys want to ask them a question, put it in all caps. Ask any questions you want. I mean, ask whatever you want. I can already tell you, Curtis is going to give you the most honest answer that he could give, and all that. And I'm learning so much because, like I said, I didn't know anything about Swedenborg Foundation. When I first got your email, Curtis, at first I was thinking, is this a company, one of those fake sponsor companies that's saying, hey, we're going to sponsor your channel? You know what I mean? You get all those emails, Swedenborg Foundation, all these fake gamer company emails. Oh, no, this is actually a real channel. Oh, this is a real. And I'm not saying that to say that, but, you get these emails, you don't know, and you see the word foundation, like, what is this?
Right. You just have to assume everything's fake when it starts now, because so much stuff is. But yeah, it's true. Yep, we're flying under the radar, but we're trying to change that. Trying to get out and get people acquainted so that they can partake in the fun.
The band TLC, or the female group, of course. Left Eye was one of the members. So was she? I know she was very spiritual and worked with Dr. Sebi. So I think that connects with your Left Eye. Can you give us, the background to what your channel means?
Sure. Yep. Hey, Shelly. So when I was setting off to do YouTube videos about Swedenborg, I was just thinking, like, what would you call your channel? I knew, like, I didn't want to sound too religious. I didn't want to sound too. I was like, what? I just want it to be sort of like a band name that nobody's ever heard. No one has any association with it. So what are we going to do? So I opened up. I had a couple of Swedenborg's books handy, and I opened them up, and I came across a couple of different phrases. But pretty soon I saw Off the Left Eye, and this was in his book Heaven and Hell, which was his best-selling book, and it was in the story of when he was experiencing what it's like to die. And I told you a little bit of that earlier, but he said that he went into this state where he was, his physical body, he could feel it like shutting down. He wasn't actually in physical danger like some of these people when they have their near-death experiences, but he was seeing what that's like. And he said his mind was kept alert enough that he could remember it and record it, but he could feel the physical body shutting down. He could feel this just breathing of the spirit on top of that. And then he says, let's pull, like your spirit is being pulled out of your body. And after he came out, then at first he was in this almost unconscious state where it was just emotion. And he said that he was surrounded by what he calls heavenly angels. And angels to him, all the angels he talks about are people, used to be people, but you get into more and more sort of advanced states of mind, and he would call you an angel. So he's surrounded by these heavenly angels. And they were actually like regulating his thoughts and feelings to make sure that nothing disturbing came in, because they wanted to keep him like safe in this space. And then as he started to wake up, they changed out with what he calls spiritual angels, which heavenly angels are very like emotion focused. These are people who are all about love. Spiritual angels are all about truth. So they were very much like that, understood how everything worked. And it was them who rolled this covering off the left eye, which he said gave him the use of spiritual sight. So while that it comes from that story, but also it turned out to be a good name for the channel, because the left side in general for him was symbolic of the intellectual side for us. And this was actually before they knew about left and right hemispheres of the brain. But he had anticipated that discovery through this science. But so the left eye is like the intellectual side. And so we say, all right, on our channel, we're giving you that left side stuff. We're giving you information and knowledge. The right side is for you to go out and do. Like the love side, we can't give you that. You got to take it and go out and do it in the world. So that's the thinking behind what the channel is called.
It's amazing. That's a 1-2 punch and a half. I love it, man.
Yeah, that's good. That's all good.
Have you appeared in any documentaries or any movies? Got anything published?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I'm speaking at some conferences now. I'm going to be in San Diego in January, speaking at the Conference for Consciousness and Human Evolution. I'm going to speak at the IANS, International Association for Near-Death Studies Conference. That's in DC, like a year from now. But then I'm working on a book. Books are slow, but mostly we've been doing YouTube. I've been in a couple of other people's little projects and things, but we're expanding, but mainly going through YouTube. And you can also, of course, there's all kinds of books at the Swedenborg Foundation, Swedenborg's books, and that we're just now putting out this new translation. I think it's the best translation they ever had. So there's some exciting stuff there on our website.
Heck yeah.
That's
our buddy
what I
Sean
wanted to ask you earlier, because you near death. Because I see you had a lot of videos on near death. What is your belief? What is your belief on near death?
Yeah, I remember being like 20 and first really encountering near death experiences. So I read Life After Life by Raymond Moody. I read My Descent into Death by Howard Storm. I read Return from Tomorrow by George Ritchie. These are some of the sort of the classics in the near-death experience world. And I'm convinced that they're real, that this is people. I've spoken at some other near-death experience conferences, gotten to meet Mary Neal, Howard Storm, Jeff Olson, some of these people, and they just seem incredibly genuine and believable. And they're convinced that they're really going, and they got to see, their spiritual eyes were opened and they got to see it. They wouldn't use those terms, but I think in sort of Swedenborgian metaphysics, what you'd be looking at is these traumatic events trigger a detachment from the concerns of physical life, and you're so interrupted from that, and sometimes your body is so shut down that you're free of that, and you're in this spiritual state, and so you're actually going around in your own spirit in the spiritual world. Because right now, we have a body and a spirit, and your body's somewhere, right? It's sitting in a room looking at your computer. Your spirit's somewhere. Your spirit is somewhere in the spiritual world. So it's kind of like if you took off a VR headset, you'd be like, oh yeah, right, I'm in this room. Your spirit's somewhere. And so as soon as that physical thing shuts down, you're seeing what's around you. So I think those people are really getting this glimpse into where we all go. I mean, that's what I think. And I think it's because of, modern medicine that you can be brought back now a lot of times into your body. But with this changed perspective, everyone who's done it is like, that's what's real. This is like kind of fake compared to that, which is weird to think about because this seems pretty real. So, but I believe them. It just seems like they know what they're talking about. And so I take them at their word there.
What's your opinion about ayahuasca?
I don't know. I don't have an opinion about it. I haven't done it. I don't know. It seems like it does good things for people. Some people have a bad time on it. It's like, it's about, according to Swedenborg, like it's about, rather than the action, it's about the intent and the impact. So what are you trying to do? Could be that it's really helpful for some people. What's your intent in doing it? And then afterwards, does it make you, does it make you a kinder person? Does it make you a more useful and focused person? So I can't say, I mean, everybody's different. Everybody's heart and mind is different. Everybody's life journey is different. And like providence, or like what Swedenborg would call the divine guidance of people, is different in everyone's life. So could well be that providence is getting some people to use that on that path. I know it's been important in, for a long time. It's been an important part of religious rituals and traditions. And Swedenborg was convinced that a lot of the world's traditions, have really strong spiritual roots. So I would say you couldn't say, oh, it's bad or it's good. It depends, right? It depends. But I bet it can be good for people.
Definitely. And I'm just interested if that just makes the veil thinner, and that's when they can actually see their spiritual animal, or is it a whole nother reality or a false reality? Some people would think it's something totally demonic or something. I don't know, but I think it's clarity, at least from the static, and in clarity, that's what. Then we get to work with it,
Right.
Then you follow your love. That's our choice.
Right.
Cool. That's cool. So what do you do any live shows on any chance on your channel, or is it just like upload videos and that kind of stuff? Do you have guests that come on your channel?
The funny thing is we sort of are just winding down this phase of live shows. You can see in there, like we did have a few days ago, we had like this panel show, Swedenborg Live. I was doing some live Q&As once a week. We're gearing up for like a new season of our pre-recorded shows. We're kind of winding down that Q&A stuff for now. But I think we have, the end of next month, we'll do one more panel show. So we've been there, as I said, we've been around for so long that we've had all kinds of different formats and things. So
over 11 years, almost 11 years.
It's a long time. It's a long time to be doing YouTube, but it's still great. It's still fun.
No, that's fantastic. You're gonna have to invite Connor and I one time to your panel.
That would be fun. Well, now that we're buddies, it would be great. Okay,
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for having me on tonight. This has been really fun.
No, hey, Connor and I love meeting new people, hearing their story and all that. It's fascinating because, like, I'll be honest, I never heard of your foundation before, and so it was like I've been more quiet than usual because I'm taking this all in for the first time. I'm like, while you're talking, I'm looking at your website, I'm looking at your YouTube videos. I'm like, wow, this is just, it's amazing stuff, and you're not really like pushing. When you think of religion, you think of people pushing religion on the people, like you got to believe in and all that. The way you're doing it is you're just giving us some information. You either want to check it out or you kind of don't. You're doing it the right way.
Yeah, thank you. I love doing it. That I think that's the way you got to do it because you honestly you're just like we're all human beings trying to figure out what's right. That's really how you do things. So I love doing it like that.
I love it. Did he mention anything about Noah, or I know the Garden of Eden and
Yeah,
Gopherwood? Did he mention Gopherwood at all?
yeah. So man, what was so this we did
Wow.
we have
Venus B's favorite show tonight. Wow, that's
oh,
awesome. I
we did
love
it.
that. People really like
We did it.
this.
We do have a show called "The Meaning of Noah's Flood," where we get into that. So yeah, Swedenborg says that there was never an actual um, flood. Like you didn't have the entire world covered in water, but that is a picture of when the human race got completely swallowed up by falsity. So this is times in history when these church eras have ended because people got so wrapped up in falsity. And the ark is like, but it also every story applies to the human race, but also applies to you individually. So there's the flood is like these times of trial and difficulty that go on in your life, and when it's like everything is disrupted except this one part of you that kind of holds what's good in you, which is like the ark, and like the animals going two by two are like all the different feelings, the good feelings in you, and the thoughts are all the birds. And so it's like the part of you that God like saves while this is going on. And so actually Swedenborg talked about this process that he calls spiritual crises that people go through periodically throughout their life, where just like dark night of the soul, everything goes wrong, but in that the important part of you is like protected, and so you come out of it stronger, which is kind of like when they got off the ark and there's like this whole world to go out into. So the flood is this picture of those crises that we go through individually and that the human race goes through.
I love it, man. I'm right by the Garden of Eden Trail here in the Panhandle of Florida, and
Oh, nice.
27 of the 28 trees that are mentioned in the good book are in this preserve, and one of them is gopherwood, Torreya coniferous, and
Yeah,
it's one of the rarest woods. It's the strongest wood in the world. You can't break it. You can only bend it, and this is one of the only exotic temperature climates that it is found. So it's truly amazing. And when you walk that path, you feel like you're at the edge of the old continent and what they're actually talking about. But again, I believe that there's multiple, Edens, multiple Atlantises, and many lost planets and lands, and it's all inside of Earth's realm, and we're all Earthlings. I was wondering too, when he said they're all humans, in these different forms. Did he say humans or Earthlings? Was he clear on, humans?
humans. Like he doesn't say they all came from planet Earth, but that we all share what it is to be human, which
Very
includes some take on the human form, which he felt like was this sort of cosmic microcosm, like everything in the universe is kind of contained in the human form. But also really it's because of not really because of our bodies, but because of what he calls our volition and discernment, or our will and understanding, which is basically like your heart and mind, the way that you care about things and the way you think about things. That's at the core of what it is to be human. And so all of these different beings have that, and that's what makes us part of one thing.
I love it, man. We
Yeah.
had a couple questions about reincarnation. What's your thoughts about it? I know you said we have a purpose in heaven. Is our purpose remain us? Energy is eternal, never
Yeah.
created nor destroyed. It always existed, of course. But are we reborn as the birds so we can learn the process? Just like he had to study the body before the mind. Like, do we have to become bugs before we are kings or
Yeah.
dogs?
So we did a show called "Do We Reincarnate," where we tried to pull together everything Swedenborg says about that. And like the short answer would be no, as in he never talks about you coming back coming back to Earth as a bug or anything, because you stay you. That everybody is who they are, and that's essential. You have to be you, and what does happen though is you continue to grow as yourself forever. So spiritual life is not static. It's not like, oh, we made it, we're in heaven now. That you're constantly being perfected in love and wisdom. So a lot of that growth is happening, but it's happening on the spiritual side. He talked about a lot of these kind of cycles and things happening that are not too dissimilar, but always within the spiritual world. It's kind of like, you're in the womb for 9 months, and then after you're born, you never go back in the womb. Like you're out there, you change, and your foundation was laid like in the womb, but then you're out living your life. That's kind of like, this world is kind of like the womb to the real life, which is the spiritual life to come. So there are some principles in the spiritual world that function a lot like the popular concepts of karma and those sorts of things. So there's elements of that, but to him, it was like, no, you couldn't come back as another person, let's say, because what makes you is so all through you that to put you in someone else would destroy you. So it's like, your mission is like to keep being you and keep being you better and better and better and learning and growing as you. So that was his take on it.
I love it. That's how I see things as well.
Cool. Good.
Man, you're just answering all the questions, nailing it right out of the ballpark. I love it. I mean, my God, anybody in the chat, you guys got any questions you want to shoot out? I think the last one you answered about the reincarnation. Is there anything else? Anybody else? See, I'm trying to
Have
see.
you had any strange dreams that you consider, I don't know, prophecy or anything that maybe came true, deja vu moments? Do you see synchronicity every day?
Okay, I don't think I have, but my wife did once. So this was, we were dating at the time, and she had a friend who they weren't seeing each other all the time. So they would see each other sometimes. And my wife was telling me like, oh man, I had a dream last night that my friend bought a white Jetta. And so, but I mean, she hadn't heard anything about that her friend was actually looking for a car or anything like that. But my wife and I were going, and we were walking in this state park near where I am, and her friend calls, and it was like, whoa, this is the same friend I was dreaming about. And she picked up the phone, and I was walking beside her. She had told me that morning about the dream. And I was walking beside her, and she was talking to her, and she was like, no way, what? And it was a white Jetta. Her friend had bought a white Jetta. So that was the closest I got to it. I had a dream. I mean, I've had a couple of dreams that I felt like were spiritual and important, but never never something as distinct and prophetic as the white Jetta. I don't know how that makes the world better, but it was cool to me to be around.
Yeah, you witnessed it. You saw magic. You saw something beyond, or just something a little unexplainable. She had a feeling, and sometimes feelings are more than anything, and I'm big on that as well. And that feeling that showed that miracles are possible, man. That's some powerful stuff. I love it.
That's good. Hey, I'm gonna have to run soon because it's getting late here, and I've got a daughter who's gonna wake me up super early.
Well, seriously, we both appreciate you jumping on. It's fantastic, giving us some time and basically teaching us something brand new about this website, about this foundation that you're part of. I never heard of it, so I would love to one day in the future to have you come back on to hear some more about it. Now we could all do some more research of it, and we'll probably have even better questions next time. But this first time is just learning it all for the first time, just taking it all in.
That's great. I'd love to come back. It's been so cool getting to meet you both and your community, and thank you for just welcoming me in.
No problem. You have a great day, man. Thank you for coming on our channel.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that tonight. That was a brand new. Connor and I didn't we didn't know too much about the foundation, and I didn't want to research it that much too, because I wanted to hear it the first time like you guys. What is this about? What is this? It's like all of us, for the first time, and Connor didn't know what to expect either. I didn't know what to expect, and and what I thought he was about was totally different than what I got. I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. Because when I misread, because I read talk to aliens. It wasn't him. It was the founder of the foundation, and he's basically talking and preaching about what the foundation is about. And it sounds like, it's up to you guys. You guys all got to be open-minded. I'm not going to tell you guys you have to believe into the foundation. Like, I don't tell anybody to believe in Scientology or not, but it's another type of thing to look into, to research, and kind of have fun with it.
Yeah, it's all positive, and it makes you think, and it expands your mind, and it's about togetherness. I'm all for it. I'm very interested in checking out his channel and seeing how he bridges the gap between the 1700s consciousness work and then bridging it to how we can use it for our life now to battle, everyday stresses and struggles and battles, man. I'm really interested. I think everything happens for a reason. It was a great show. He was very informative. I was blown away. He was incredible.
Yeah, he said it at the right speed where you're understanding what he was saying.
Yeah.
It wasn't too fast. It wasn't too slow. It was just right there. And guys, I'll be back tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific time. And I want to think you guys have a great night. And beyond that, guys, we'll see you later.